Hi, Pocket, and trust me, I'm no mother.
You're right. If I was a mom, this would be kinda shocking.
Blossom Dance is over, so our limited bounty dailies are now back to weeklies. Sad, but this week's a fun one. I like to look at these like a little quiz, like a multi-bird single stone combo scenario, if you catch my drift. For this week, we have 5 1-star or higher quests, okay, that's literally everything in the world. 3 quests in the plains, 5 large flying wyverns, 3 tempered monsters, 5-star or higher, and the last one's a big bonus for clearing everything else. Because of the 1-star requirement, there's a hard limit here. We're not completing all of these without doing 5 individual quests, so there's no cheesing it with multi-monster hunts. But we can find overlap with the other criteria, tempered flying wyverns in the plains. There are 3 flying wyverns that spawn in the plains, Rathian, Raydao, and Arkfeld, but the moment I arrived at the plains, I had a feeling there was one already here because of the sand tide going on, and sure enough, a tempered Raydao. Hunting one for the field survey, and then saving it as an investigation lets me hunt it 4 times, so that would cover almost everything except for the 5th flying wyvern. While slaughtering tempered flying wyverns, let's talk holidays. Mother's Day is coming up. I'm kind of glad I caught it early because usually the days slip by me and I notice a week late. I don't particularly like the idea of celebrating one group of people on the whole, generally. The ethylene released by a rotting apple will cause the other apples around to spoil quicker. In my case, I had a fantastic mother, so without placing my own apple into the bushel, I'll simply hold and appreciate this apple, and tell you some stories about it. My mama. My mom's actually one of the main motivations I have for making my videos. Not simply because she birthed me into life, which is kind of necessary motivation for anyone to do anything, but because she's not a gamer. My mom's got a really sharp mind, one of the sharpest, but she was raised without a controller sitting in front of a monitor like I was. Even though she doesn't have the experience or knowledge in gaming, I know that there are things that she would appreciate and think are cool from what I've played. Whenever I make my videos, I try to word and explain things in a way that my mom could understand and appreciate. Obviously, someone who has played Monster Hunter for a couple thousand hours can actually a lot of what I say into oblivion, but I do think that there's value in being able to translate things into functional language that less experienced folks can understand. My mom might not ever play these games that I do, but when I talk to her, I want to be able to explain things to her in a way that she would understand, as she did for me when I was a little one with no experience of the world. No understanding of money or time or value, just eating and sleeping and observing the world. I've always had a notion for mischief, which is often assumed I acquired from my mother. Once she was driving me to elementary school, and I was sitting in the back, listening to music, looking out the window. My mom, who was half ready for going to work, started to push the gas pedal to take us through an intersection when I cry in pain from the back seat. She doesn't lose control of the vehicle or anything, but calls out to make sure, "Are you okay?" I was fine. I'd crushed a baby carrot behind my back teeth to make the sound, and the rest was acting. Eventually, she laughed too, and then dropped me off. My classmates and teachers rarely appreciated my kind of mischief, and I often found myself on the verge of trouble. This brought more stress, which I solved with more mischief, which merited more stress, until my bottle of cleverness ran dry, and the years of trickery caught up to me, and I was promptly punished. I bounced from school to school until I landed at one my mother worked at as a higher-up. We feared others would suspect preferential treatment, so I went under a different name for that time, and I referred to my mother by her first name. For months, I was a secret agent, and I got to pretend that my mother was a stranger. That was fun. And whenever people gossiped or cheated on tests, I reported it straight to the top, like a good narc. It was much more fun than mischief alone, and I was fiercely loyal to my mom, as she taught me to be, by being fiercely loyal to me. During all those previous school conundrums where I'd become a volleyball bouncing here and there, I went to therapy for a while. Though I eventually came upon a fantastic therapist who I remember fondly and reflect on often, my first experience with therapy was very, very unfortunate. Isolated for these sessions, there were two of them who worked together, and it often felt a lot more like an interrogation than a conversation. They spent too little time gaining my trust, and too much time trying to pry things out of me. I told them this. It was a critique I had of their methods, and a reason I didn't feel comfortable in their presence. Those therapists told me often that I was doing great. They gave me silly little assignments about stopping and thinking before acting, which is the first step of premeditating a good mischief. I had plenty of practice doing that, but maybe they weren't really listening when I had told them that before. In the end, after a series of sessions, they invited my mother in to talk with her about my progress. And despite having told me over and over how well I was doing, the moment my mom had entered the room, they started to explain to her that I was struggling, that I really needed help, and that I wasn't doing well. I got upset, unsurprisingly, and though I don't get loud when I get upset, I usually get sharp. "You lied," I told them. "You told me I was doing well. You're lying to me right now." And they laughed at no joke I'd told. When I got back to the car, I told my mom. I pleaded with her to believe me. And she did, because she trusted me, and because I felt comfortable to talk to her after every session and tell her about what we'd gone over. I'd been very communicative with my mom about everything, so when the time came, she believed me. But I worried, after that experience, about others who might find themselves in those exact same circumstances. How many parents those therapists could do that to, who would believe the therapist over their child? The therapists were very convincing in their deceptions that even for a brief moment, I began to question myself, before I saw them as the parasitic worms that would never know my presence again. I'm lucky to have a good mom, and she's going to end up watching this video, so I can say that directly. Thanks, Mama. It's not solely the act of motherhood that makes my mom great, but that she's a good person at a base level, and then ended up being a mom after that first. After finishing up with the 4 Ray Dows, a Rathian was kind enough to show up in the plains. Tempered too, though that wasn't necessary anymore. Just a 5th flying wyvern to finish the last of the bounties. After chopping it into pieces and coming back to the bounty cat, I collected my goodies for the week. Happy Mother's Day. Thanks for watching. Good luck, fellow hunters, and goodbye.